Microphone test, check.
Hello.
Hello?
Howdy, microphones are working fine.
Can you hear me?
would kind of raise their hand or speak up or turn on your video, we'll know you're here.
Yeah, there's tons of people in here. We're just waiting for you to go.
Bill Cothran from Oklahoma.
Hey, Bill.
Okay, I'll be in there in just a second. Okay, bye. Hey guys, I'm gonna go get quiet on here. I'll be here in just a second.
Sean Jackson with Arkansas.
Okay, hi, Sean. I see you. So that leaves Louisiana.
Hi, this is Ben Wicker with the Louisiana Watershed Initiative on the line.
Great. And it was Ben, I'm sorry?
Ben Wicker, yes.
Great. Good deal. Okay. And I guess, Scott, maybe you and Andy have kind of worked out whether, I mean, we don't really take minutes of these committee calls other than whatever the committee would like for your own purposes.
I'm sorry, Sue, there was a lot of background noise. I couldn't.
I just said that I didn't know whether between you and Andrea you'd worked out who would keep minutes.
Yes, we've got.
If you feel, I know it's a little awkward with you being just on the phone, but I think whenever you're ready to sort of call to order as the chair, I think we still don't know who the Louisiana representative. Oh, I'm sorry, Ben Wicker is on. So I'll go ahead and mute. I don't know whether that's part of the problem or not, Scott, but it's all yours.
Okay. Well, it is now 1:35 p.m. and I will call the environmental meeting to order. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Scott Van Winkle, Texas Technical Advisor for the Red River Compact Commission, and I would like to thank you all for your attendance and participation in the 2020 Red River Compact Commission Environmental Committee meeting. August, set up. As Texas is a host state for this year's annual meeting, I was named the chair for this committee meeting. Each state will have an opportunity to report on its environmental activities. We can take questions after each report. However, because we only have an hour, I recommend that we save any necessary detailed discussions until all states have had time to report. I'll follow the order of reports submitted and included in the packet. I believe that's Texas, Arkansas, Oklahoma, and Louisiana. If you didn't have anything submitted, but you have a presentation ready, just hop in at the end there, please. Also, all reports submitted can be found on Tcq's Red River Compact Commission website, if anyone would like to use that to follow. With that said, if there's any questions, comments, or if there's anything I missed, please let me know.
Hey Scott, this is Trent Gay with the Tcq. If you're not speaking, go ahead and mute. That would help a lot.
Sorry, Trent.
I think everyone needs to mute when they're not speaking.
Okay. That's another good idea. If you could mute while you're not speaking, that might cut out some of the background noise. If there are other comments or questions, I'll go ahead and get started with Texas Environmental Report. For the invasive species, zebra mussels have become a big issue in the last 10 years. They grow very dense. They attach to everything. They can block pipelines, clog water intakes, become an issue for water quality. They usually outcompete native species. And because they grow so dense, they can cover and suffocate native clams and mussels. With that said, Texas has 19 lakes within 5 major river basins that have been fully infested with zebra mussels. The Red River Basin became the first basin within the state to have a confirmed infection. That was discovered in Lake Texoma in 2009. Since then, 2 additional lakes, Lake Dean Gilbert and Randall Lake, have also been infested. You can see in the picture there, the state of Texas will show you where the infestations are, where there have been positive test results, and where there are suspected tests. The second graphic shows basically the proximity of the 3 lakes within each other in the Red River Basin. Various researchers have tried to come up with ideas of how to eradicate and minimize the issues with the mussels. Most of these were chemicals. Again, mussels attach to almost anything. They do not like copper nickel. They do not like copper nickel, and they try to come up with coatings that you can paint on pipes, on water intakes, on other surfaces to minimize the attaching. Unfortunately, the catch is having to come up with a chemical that the EPA will approve. So currently, really the only way to stop the spread is to prevent the spread. Texas has regulations that include all of Texas for all types and sizes of boats. Boaters are required to now drain all water before approaching or leaving a water body. Possession or transportation of zero mussels in Texas is a Class C misdemeanor, can be up to a Class B misdemeanor, punishable by a fine up to $2,000 or time in jail or both. Besides the zebra mussels, it's also lawful. Yeah.
I'm sorry to interrupt. This is Sue. I just wanted to make sure that everybody knew that they could be following along with your report, which was part of the combined document that Andrea had put together that I emailed out a couple of days ago. That's called.
Yes,
so anyway, since we aren't sharing a screen and don't have your graphics actually on the screen, I just wanted to kind of make sure that everybody knew that they could be finding your information there. So sorry to interrupt.
No problem. Yes, ma'am. I'll reiterate that. All the reports that will be discussed today that were submitted can be found on the TCQ website on the Red River Compact Commission website in a PDF file. They'll all be there.
And I believe the report you're going over, Scott, is attachment A, correct? If everyone has it in front of them. Okay.
Yes. Should be the first report.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Special rules for the Red River Basin include provisions for grass, bighead, and and silver carp. The grass carp is listed as potentially harmful species in Texas. However, state law allows controlled stocking of grass carp to control nuisance aquatic plants. Anyone wishing to get involved in this has to have a permit from the Texas Parks and Wildlife Department. Reservoirs currently in the Red River Basin with grass carp permitting include Spring Lake Park Pool, Pittsburgh City Lake, Lake Cypress Springs, and Waterloo Lake. If a grass carp is caught in any of these waters, it should be immediately returned unharmed. In the attempt to stop or slow intrusion of the bighead and silver carp, it is unlawful to transport live non-game fishes from the following locations in the Red River Basin. Number 1, below Lake Texoma downstream to Arkansas border, Big Cypress Bayou downstream of Farrell's Bridge Dam on Lake of the Pines, and the third one, the Sulphur River downstream of Lake Wright-Patman Dam. TCQ has a program to monitor water quality called Texas Clean Rivers Program. The Texas Clean Rivers Program is a partnership between TCEQ and regional water authorities to coordinate and conduct water quality monitoring, assessment, and stakeholder participation to improve the quality of surface water within each basin in Texas. It was established in 1991, it's been very successful up to this point. 15 regional water authorities manage the program in 23 river and coastal basins. The Clean Rivers Program partners collect more than 60% of the water quality data used by TCEQ. There are 3 TCEQ partners within the Red River Basin. The Red River Authority of Texas is in the Red River Basin. The Northeast Texas Municipal Water District is the partner for the Cypress River Basin, and the Sulphur River Basin Authority of Texas is the partner for the Sulphur River Basin. TCEQ has also developed a map-based tool for the Clean Rivers Program for online viewing of data associated with TCEQ monitoring stations and a query tool for extracting surface water quality data from the Surface Water Quality Monitoring Program. And you can see a screenshot of what you can get by clicking on one of the water quality monitoring stations. It'll bring up location, it'll bring up the type of reservoir, the segment name, and any issues that may be found in that segment. Combined with that, the Surface Water Quality Monitoring Program monitors and evaluates physical, chemical, and biological characteristics of aquatic systems as a basis for effective policy. There are more than 1,800 surface water quality sites within the state, and these are used to collect all these different samples for the program. This data is used by TCQ to characterize existing conditions or identify emerging problems, evaluate the effectiveness of water quality control programs, or identify trends. The data are also used to determine compliance with the Texas Surface Water Quality Standards through the Texas Integrated Report. The Surface Water Quality Program has an interactive surface water quality viewer through ArcMap, available to the public, that allows viewers to view the stream segments and water bodies for any body of water that TCQ is currently monitoring. In addition, there's an annual workshop that's held each fall to bring together water quality professionals who can learn about procedures to assure quality and comparability of data and to share advances in technology with water quality. And that last picture is just one of the water quality monitoring stations. And that concludes Texas Environmental Report. Are there any questions, comments? If not, we can proceed to Arkansas's report, please.
Ken, did you want to go ahead and do it, or do you want me to do it?
John, you can go ahead.
And let's see. This has also been supplied in the packet that Sue sent out. Let me see what attachment this is.
I think it's attachment B.
Yes, that's attachment B. I'm not going to really get bogged down in the details about it. Not much has changed since 2018. We haven't gotten the new listings. Most of this is handled through the Arkansas Department of Environmental Quality, and the report itself highlights the differences between the 2016 303 delistings and the 2018 303 delistings. There have been some additions within the Red River Basin, Category 5. That begins with Table 4. The main differences that you'll notice, the ones that are being added, you will see are highlighted in yellow. Anything that is being removed is highlighted in gray. There is a little bit that's been added. The report goes on to state that our standards are based on least distribution water bodies, approximately 6 in each level 3 ecoregions, and their average water quality constitute concentrations. Water quality standards for certain constituents, such as dissolved oxygen, temperature, and pH, cannot be attained due to their susceptibility to change climatic conditions. And for example, these constituents fluctuate with ambient weather conditions. This leads to frequent removal in addition to water bodies not meeting attainment levels for these constituents. Changes in the 303D listings caused by fluctuations in dissolved oxygen, temperature, and pH are shown in Table 6. Some water bodies, the natural background concentration in dissolved oxygen, temperature, and pH may be significantly different than the ecoregion average. And in this situation, the individual water bodies cannot attain water quality standards established for the ecoregion. We do house the non-point source management for the state within the Natural Resources Division, and they implement best management practices which have been effective in reducing pollutants entering 3 of Arkansas's rivers. There's for information on different projects that are being handled by the non-point section, there's a link to the EPA's website. The report also lists designated DEQ waters within the state and TMDL prioritizations. And then it also looks at the 319 non-point pollution program update by watershed within the Red River Basin. And other than that, are there any questions?
No questions?
No questions. I will relinquish the mic.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
So we'll now move to the state of Oklahoma.
Good afternoon, everyone. This is Bill Cothran with the state of Oklahoma. And much like Andrea said earlier, there is a hearing going on next to my office. So if you hear shouting and yelling, it is not me, it is the hearing. They've been quite loud, but I believe we're attachment C, are we not, Andrea?
That's correct, Bill. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'll be very brief. In the Oklahoma report, there is a description of our beneficial use monitoring program, otherwise known as BUMP. It's a program where we monitor surface water resources across the entire state of Oklahoma, both lakes and streams. So at the back of the report is a link to all of our pages that outlines the sampling results from all of our work on both lakes and streams. We also do a groundwater monitoring program as well called GMAP, which is talked about a little bit in the report. And there's also a link to some GMAP results as well, I believe. We didn't include an awful lot of results in the report, mostly included links, so we're not killing too many trees. There's also a link to the latest integrated report that's been approved in Oklahoma, the 2018 integrated report, which also includes the 303D listed waters. Not much new to report on the water quality side of things. The same issues that have historically been there on the Oklahoma side are still there. One update I may give to the group is a couple of years ago, we did a site-specific criteria for the city of Idabel for copper, which we submitted to Region 6 for approval, and Idabel discharges into a tributary of the Red. We sent it to EPA. It doesn't look like EPA is going to approve that site-specific criteria. So we are in the process of figuring out where we go from here with the city of Idabel. So I was hoping I could tell you we had some site-specific criteria for that discharger, but we do not. So we'll continue to figure out how we move forward on that front. The issues we continue to have in terms of water quality in Oklahoma are related to suspended solids and nutrients. Nothing special there to really talk about. Oklahoma will also be looking at updating our bio criteria in the state. That's something we'll be doing over the next couple of years that I'll be informing the group about as we really kick that project off and start updating our criteria, which hasn't been updated in quite a while. We're also working very closely with the EPA and the Cyan Network, looking at algal blooms across our water resources. We don't have a final report on that. I'm hoping I can include that in next year's report, where we go from here. And we're also looking at trying to implement a monitoring network in Oklahoma, working with Cyan as well, to continue that project after our grant ends here in about 3 or 4 months. So with that, I will entertain any questions the group may have. That's my report.
Thank you, Bill. Any questions?
Yes, Scott, this is Sue. I have one for Bill. I guess I wondered if you could talk just a little bit more about the GMAP.
Sure.
I guess didn't know whether I just read quickly through your summary there. It looked like you got Oklahoma funding to do that, and I guess. Yes. I'm just not, I was never a groundwater person back during my Wyoming days, and was just curious whether there was then, I guess, EPA groundwater water quality programs that then you kind of have to fit with, even though you're sort of doing this for, for Oklahoma reasons probably. So anyway, I was just interested in a little more details there.
Yeah, thanks, Sue. What we're trying to do with that program, it was funded using state appropriated dollars, roughly 10 years ago now. And the idea behind the entire program was we didn't have a holistic network across the state looking at groundwater quality and quantity. We've been doing quantity monitoring for groundwater for quite a while. I mean, back to basically the creation of our agency. So back to the late 50s, we have quantity data. So we established a quality program. The legislature funded it. We've just finished up monitoring our major basins. The idea was to set up a 5-year rotation to monitor quality and quantity on our major aquifers. And we just finished up the 5th year last summer. So we're hoping to come out with a comprehensive report which outlines the findings. It should be out, frankly, any day. COVID-19 kind of put a crimp in that a little bit. We're working on the report, but it should be out. And yeah, Sue, it's a very holistic report that looks at quality and quantity. And we're pretty proud of it. It's not really necessarily related to the EPA groundwater program, though we try to work with those folks. The groundwater program is actually funded through 106 and another state agency, the ODEQ. But we do work pretty closely with them to make sure we're doing work cooperatively. We also work with Kent Wilkins group within our own agency who do water planning surveys, water rights surveys, which is basically quantity related. So we do some work with them as well, trying to make sure we're maximizing our data collection efforts across the state. I hope that answered your question, Sue.
No, it did. That's great. But it raised another one, which is
stop talking.
Do you permit all groundwater wells in Oklahoma?
Kent Wilkins, buddy, you're up.
Well, we permit all non-domestic wells. Domestic wells do not require a permit, but all other uses do require a water use permit. Yes.
Gotcha. And you have the authority to, I guess, deal with interference claims, or I guess, do you ever regulate a groundwater well?
Well, groundwater in Oklahoma is a private property right, so there's no priority of uses. There are spacing requirements in effect in most basins, but other than that, one use does not have a priority over the other one. And there's no junior-senior permit system as well.
Great. Thanks, Ken. And Bill, appreciate it, the answers.
No, thank you.
Hey, Stu.
Yes.
Can you hear me? This is Julie.
I can. How are
Hi,
you?
everybody. Good. I wanted to chime in too, just to since we have all the other states here, you know, that beneficial use monitoring program, the groundwater portion was actually added after our water plan was completed. So as a priority recommendation of that 2012 water plan, we got, Bill, it was $1 million a year out of general revenue.
It was 800,000, Julie, for groundwater specifically.
Yeah, so general revenue increased appropriations because of that water plan recommendation by the public. So that's why these water planning efforts are huge. They actually revamped our funding for the original stream water and lakes monitoring, beneficial use monitoring program, and then they added the brand new groundwater monitoring program. So they found that it was important. I thought that was pretty poignant. Of course, all of that funding was approved because there was a big major drought right at the end of our planning process. So FYI, take away from the others. That's all I had.
I was going to say, so if you can time your droughts appropriately, it can be very beneficial.
Yeah, good job.
Interestingly enough, the public comment from our water plan is what drove that entire monitoring process. It wasn't something that the agency was necessarily pushing for. It was we got a lot of comments from the public about the need to have more data to make decisions. Go figure.
Thank you, Bill.
Anything else? Thank you.
Any other questions? If not, we'll move on to the representative of Louisiana, please.
Good afternoon, this is Ed Knight. We don't have a whole lot of changes as well. Same circumstances as the others have had, really. We have the same report that we normally put out. We've got items numbers 1 through 5. We'll include an attachment to Louisiana's Water Resource Commission annual report, the 2020 version. So that'll discuss some of the groundwater circumstances and the Sparta Aquifer, which is the bottom part of the watershed, so that's kind of appropriate. But we've got the entire report in there for any other extracurricular reading you might want to do. So starting with item number 1, our 2018 integrated report was approved, of course. It did hold 6 deferred actions for dissolved oxygen, which resulted in 6 changes to impaired. The 2020 report is in progress. All other portions of the report has been fully impaired, but the 6 assessments, they'll have to be redone for the 2020 version. In the report, we're providing you with a link to the 2018 integrated report. Item number 2 is intensive surveys or TMDL activity that's going to be happening. Louisiana is currently not planning on any in the Red River Basin for this year. The water quality conditions, they remain unchanged. We're traditionally in pretty good shape. The big issues we had really were in the red as chlorides, but they've consistently been getting better. We don't have any updated testing for that as of yet. The dissolved oxygen has traditionally been a problem in many of our watersheds, just due to our grade and lack of movement of water. But again, they haven't changed a ton either. So the Department of Environmental Quality handles all of that. They're in the process of working through everything. As the report gets prepared, we can update through committees if you'd like. So the Water Resources Commission report. There's been a decline in saltwater intrusion into our aquifer systems. A lot of that has been due to just an excessive amount of groundwater withdrawals. There's not a great big surface water withdrawal in Louisiana, so the saltwater has begun to intrude into parts of our aquifers. The Sparta Aquifer, which is our particular interest, is static as well, same as last year. It changed slightly, but not a lot. It's still going in a positive direction. In South Caddo Parish, which is the northwest part of our state, they had a temporary groundwater emergency that was declared by the Office of Conservation in 2011 due to drought, which technically remains in place, but the restrictions were lifted in 14. Again, we're going to include a link to the report for the 2020 Annual Water Resources Commission report. If you have any questions, feel free to ask.
Thank you, Ed. Any questions for Ed?
Ed, this is Sue. Just a quick question, just to make sure I understood that. So the report had not been sent to Andrea yet. That's something you still will get sent?
Yes, ma'am. Yeah, it's all prepared. It's sitting here. Post meeting, we'll just send it to her, or we can get it to her probably today.
Yeah, if you'd like to go ahead and get that over to me today, I'll include it in the updated packet we'll send out at the end of today, so everyone will have a full packet for tomorrow.
Excellent.
If that works for you.
Great, thanks, Ed.
Any other questions? Okay. I guess we will conclude this meeting.
So, Sue, do you want to remind everyone that we log back on for the next meeting at 2:30 and for them to use the link provided in the agenda just to relog on? Each meeting had its own unique login.
Right, yeah, because we thought different people might be participating in different committee events. So so the community college folks did create different links for us for each meeting. So so that combined agenda that Andrea developed has each of those. So I guess, Scott, just maybe before this committee ends, then I guess generally in the interim between annual meetings, does this committee have reason to meet, or do they meet, I guess?
I'm not sure if we have any discussion that we need to.
Yeah, no, and that's fine if you don't. I guess I just, you know, before we lost everybody, just thought I'd, you know, see whether there was the need for, you know, any kind of continuing work items or any, I guess, assignments from the commission tomorrow. But it doesn't sound as though there's any. The committee itself is looking to kind of get verification for, or you know, to get the commission to actually weigh in on any of the work items in front of the committee.
Sure.
Scott, this is Ken. And Bill, I'll ask you to weigh in. I thought I remembered last year that we had talked in general terms about maybe doing some type of map related to our 303D listing, just as another coverage, I guess, for the Red River Basin. And I couldn't remember if we had decided that was a good idea or not. And if you can refresh my memory, what was going on.
We did talk about that, Ken, and I'm not sure we ever decided anything. As I recall, I kind of looked at my notes and I didn't have anything in there other than We talked about it, something good to continue to talk about, but I couldn't find any action items, if that makes sense.
I agree, Bill. I think we had talked about, we discussed it a little bit, but we didn't really come down to a final, were we going to get together and try to do something about it or not?
Yeah. It's still not a bad idea. But yeah, go ahead, Ken. I'm sorry.
Well, that might be something we could discuss in the interim, maybe between now and the next meeting. Maybe we could set up a call with just the environmental committee and talk maybe in a little more detail as to the merits of that, and then what, is it something we can easily produce, and will it be of any benefit, I guess, if we did. But that might be easier to do with a smaller group, and might be a reason to touch base on the committee between now and next year's annual meeting, or something to put forward, I guess, to think about.
Yeah, I'm okay with that, Ken. I don't know how the others feel, and frankly, I'd probably have to bring in some people that aren't even a part of this call. So I think if we want to do it, the interim's probably a pretty good time to do it in a smaller group setting.
I agree. This is Scott. I agree. We can set that up. Anything else? Okay.
Oh, well, great, Scott. I think everybody can go get another glass of water or a pop or whatever you need to get you through the afternoon, and we'll get back on in about 20 minutes here with a different link.
Yes, different link.
Thank you, Sue.
You bet. Thanks to everybody. Okay.
Thanks,
Talk
everybody.
soon.
afternoon. This is Scott Van Winkle, Texas Technical Advisor. Do we have the technical engineer advisors for the other states on?
Arkansas is here.
Thank you. We'll give them a couple more minutes.
I believe Johannes is on for Oklahoma. He's shy.
Okay.
I'm here.
Hey, Johannes.
Hey, Johannes.
I accidentally muted my microphone.
Waiting on one more. Is the engineer advisor for Louisiana on the phone, on the call?
God, they were punched in as a group on the previous call, so I would expect them to do the same on this committee.
Okay. We'll give them another minute or so, see if we hear from them. Has the group from Louisiana made it on yet?
Yep, we just joined. We're having technical problems over here.
I understand. Thank you. Okay, I think we've got everybody from each state. It is 2:34, June 29th. I will call the engineering committee meeting to order.
Eaton browser. Yeah.
That's how we did it.
Yep.
We'll use the same format we did in the previous meeting. I'll start with the Texas engineering report, and we'll just go Arkansas, Oklahoma, Louisiana. So for Texas, we look at reservoir levels in the Red River Basin in Texas. There are 20 reservoirs tracked by Texas Water Development Board's reservoir status tracking application on its website, including Sulphur River and Cypress Creek basins. Currently, things are looking pretty good. Currently, basin-wide, the reservoirs are about 97% full, ranging from a couple of lows, just under 11% in some smaller reservoirs, to 100% in Reach 2. Lake Texoma is currently at 100% full. All the reservoirs in the Sulphur and Cypress basins are full or nearly full. And that table there shows you each of the 20 that the Texas Water Development Board tracks. Looking at water use permits in Texas, in the Red River Basin in Texas, my first mistake is that first line. There are actually 295 active water rights, not 286, 295 for irrigation, municipal, mining, industrial, recreation, and other uses. One of the big ones right now, the city of Wichita Falls has applied to construct and maintain a 275,000 acre-foot reservoir, Lake Ringgold, on the Little Wichita River. TCQ has recommended the permit be granted. However, there remains a notice and comment period. If this is granted, the City of Wichita Falls would still need to apply for a Clean Water Section 404 permit to U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. From the beginning of 2019 to the present, TCQ has issued 9 water use permits. Looking down at dam safety, TCQ Dam Safety Program monitors and regulates both private and public dams in Texas. They are over 4,000 regulated by a dam safety program, and basically currently, according to the program director, there are no dam safety issues identified. Moving to page 3, the stream flow conditions. For the calendar year 2019 through the present, stream flow conditions have been highly variable in Texas region, Cypress Creek, and Red and Sulphur rivers. Flows at the index and spring bank, which are indicator flow gauges for Texas compact compliance, have experienced several high flows, separated by lower average flows. The highest daily flow at index was about 85,500 cubic feet per second in May of 2020, and the low was 2,710 cubic feet per second in October of 2019. At the spring bank gauge, the peak was 112,000 CFS on May 29, 2020, with a low of 5,080 CFS in September of 2019. And the picture there of the state of Texas kind of shows you through color indicators where the high and low flow rates are. And then the graph at the bottom basically graphs the mean daily discharge for the spring bank and index gauges from January 1, 2019 through June 1st, 2020. And that is all I have. Any questions?
Yeah,
Comments?
Scott, I had a question on Wichita Falls. Is that a new reservoir, or is that expanding their existing water supply?
It will be a new reservoir. This will be a new permit. So looking at, you know, the time range varies, but right now they're just going through the very first phase of this. They're applying for their water use permit. It'll take a while to get through us, through TCQ. It'll take a while to get through Army Corps. After that, it's construction. If they get through both those, it's construction. We're looking at a few to many years before this comes up. But they're looking at future water conservation. They're looking at future water use. So yeah, this is a new one.
Well, they've had kind of an interesting case study there related to drought, because they're kind of out in the middle of nowhere, and they experienced pretty significant drought a few years ago, and they essentially recycled their wastewater treatment effluent, and essentially you know, were able to pretty much have 70 to 80% efficiency on you know, flattening out their progression as far as water use. And so there's you know, there's industry there, there's an Air Force base there, I think, also, and we haven't, you know, been really had that level of drought in Arkansas per se, but it is I found it an interesting case study on how to in water conservation, when they were totally dependent on surface water, and when they have no precipitation and the lake dries up, what do you do? So they took pretty drastic means.
Yeah, they had to figure it out. It seems like they at least did. I think they're looking at that future use now and growth, I guess. Anything else? Any other questions? Thank you. We'll move on to Arkansas.
Okay. we included in the packet, if you remember, there's been a lot of attention the last few years in discussions with Arkansas and Louisiana regarding some of the flows on those streams in southeast Arkansas that flow into Louisiana. And I guess 2 years ago, after exploring some, paying for some modeling work and looking at ways to model, I guess, to come at a weekly runoff, which is included in the compact language, we began to monitor the BEF and I guess look at ways to more statistically describe the conditions on the BEF River. And just to recap a little bit, the concern initially brought forward by Louisiana related to the amount of diversion upstream in Arkansas and whether or not the apportionment that's mentioned in the compact was being met. And the compact includes a term called weekly runoff. And so for several years, the discussion, I guess, from a technical standpoint was looking at how do you accurately estimate a weekly runoff? So one of the issues a couple of years back was the interest in looking at maybe stream flow upstream on the BEF River and then compare that to a gauge at the state line. So Louisiana did put in a gauge at the state line, and we've got 9 or 10 years of data, I think, on that. And so for the past 2 years, what we've been doing on Arkansas side is looking to see if there was any correlation between what we see upstream and then measure downstream at the gauge. The inference being that, or what we were trying to determine was, is there any way to determine the significance of surface water withdrawal in Arkansas as indicated by the stream gauges? The first year, we were unable to identify any real patterns related to what conditions we might see upstream and then an associated condition downstream at the state line with relation to precipitation, gauging, what type of reported water use would we expect. And essentially we narrowed it down to, look, we really needed to focus on the growing season and when we might actually attribute and have surface water diversion. And what fell out of that concentration, I guess, or more focus in looking at comparing all these factors was we concentrated more in the early months of the growing season and seeing if we could find any correlation there. I guess I can say with certainty this year, and looking at 2019 data, that we were not any more successful than we were the previous year at establishing correlations between those factors. So in the report, the way that we tried to describe the data that we looked at for 2019 was as I mentioned before, we tried to look at what did we measure upstream, and then can we maybe look at the flow downstream when the flow is below 40 CFS, which is a flow that is mentioned as a trigger in the compact language that describes that Arkansas will allow an apportionment of 40% of the weekly runoff to flow into Louisiana, and will take affirmative steps when the flow is less than 40 CFS. So in table 5 in my report, if anybody wants to look at that, it's on page 12. We basically looked at the downstream gauge and compared flow with the upstream when we had flows that on average were less than 40 CFS. And we identified in that table, you see that we basically looked at the percentage of flow that was measured at the upstream gauge and how much of that flow made it or was measured at the downstream gauge. So what we see is that we were many times over the majority. I think the lowest time was about 65 or 70% at the downstream gauge of what was measured upstream during the days when the flow was less than 40 CFS. So we really didn't see a lot of correlation there. Again, one of the factors was precipitation, and so when we compared 2018 precipitation with 2019 precipitation, if and Louisiana can verify this, last year about this time they were well, actually in May last year they were flooding out. They weren't concerned about getting enough water, they had too much water. And if you compare that to the months in 2018, there was more water during the May and June period in 2019, which I think certainly contributed to not really seeing any consecutive days of 40 CFS or less. The criteria that we have set was that we needed to see and quantify how many times that we have at least 7 consecutive days when the flow is less than that trigger or the 40 CFS. And that's related to the term weekly runoff in the compact. And so when we looked at that, we didn't find any 7 consecutive days during the growing season. Basically, we found the period of 7 consecutive day occurrence was typically the low flow time of the year when we normally don't think of having a lot of surface water during that time. But at the end of the summer and moving into fall, historically, most of our streams in the state, those are the months that generally historic low flows are recorded. So that's when we had on the BEF in 2019, the duration of 7 consecutive days did occur in October outside the growing season. So in summary, I guess, of the report, we still are looking at ways to develop patterns or correlations if there are any. And I think as we don't have much more to report, I guess, this year, other than we're just not seeing the 7 consecutive days and trying to tie to one particular factor, I think still is one of the things that we're challenged with. I just don't feel like we're going to have a single factor indicator that's going to be meaningful. It's more in looking at several factors by comparison, I think, to more or less get as accurate as we can to describe the flow conditions. And then in summary, I guess I'll just, for those that are new to this topic, in general, the BEF River, both in Louisiana and Arkansas, was many improvements were made to increase production. And so the whole watershed was more or less plumbed by the Corps of Engineers back in the 60s and 70s to be able to drain and to increase agricultural production. And as part of those improvements, weirs were put along the stream, both in Louisiana and Arkansas. And over time, those streams, some of those weirs have been built up and maintained. Some of them have not. But the system has kind of equalized with those weirs in place because there's not much retention capacity in the basin, natural retention capacity, because most of it certainly in the upper part has been channelized in that and improved to drain quickly. And that's what I think is continues to be the challenge in trying to develop correlations between different points along the river and at different times of the year. One of the things that I will include as well is that the USGS is doing what they're calling the Mississippi Alluvial Plain Study that was initiated by the state of Mississippi. But part of their work has been done in Arkansas, and more or less they have collected some data at different places in Arkansas, different streams. And this project they have, essentially, they're taking aerial surveillance and more or less using that for geologic surveys and being able to describe, I guess, a little more detail what the geology is underlying some of these streams that they're looking at, and ultimately being able to describe in a little bit better terms the interaction between surface and base flow. And I think that's one of the big questions that still remains, is not only on the Beth, but a lot of our other streams in Arkansas, is the quantification of that interaction and how that relates to water availability. And I'm glad for Louisiana, if Ed, if you have any comments there, if you guys have had a chance to look at the report or not, or answer any questions from any of the other committee members.
Thank you, Ken. Anybody have any questions or comments? Okay, thank you. We'll move on to Oklahoma.
Hi, good afternoon. So I didn't have the formal report, so I'm just gonna give quick updates on the floodplain section and dam safety, and a little bit of our water rights. So we had a major flood in 2019, and due to that flood, we have Senate Bill 1269 that asking Oklahoma Water Resources Board to develop our first statewide flood plan, and that one was approved last May, and we are working on that flood plan right now, and it's going to be part of our Oklahoma Comprehensive Water Plan. In the dam safety section, we're working with Louisiana, Arkansas, and Mississippi to update our probable maximum precipitations. Just like Texas, we have thousands of dams. We have more than 4,700 dams throughout the state. And this PMP study is going to be used for our new design standard for new dams, and to review our existing dams as well. We just approved our rule changes on this dam safety. It's just approved several days ago that allow the new study can be used for future dam rehab and dam construction. We're also working with FEMA to for the high hazard potential dam grant for any rehabilitation project for high hazard dams. We received that grant in 2019. We just submitted our application for 2020 last week. And we worked with the state Oklahoma Emergency Management to update our hazard mitigation plan to allow high hazard dam to be eligible to receive this grant. On the well drillers programs, due to the COVID-19, we moved to online testing for our well drillers so they can get the license without going to our office and have to face-to-face meeting. Water right permit, right now we have more than 13,000 active long-term permits for more than 6.9 million acre-feet per year. We issue about 35 groundwater permit in FY 2020, about almost 26,000 acre-feet, and 55 stream water permits, totaling 25,500 acre-feet. We also issue 880 professional temporary permit for 38,000 acre-feet. So that's all I have right now. If you have any questions, I'm all ears.
Thank you, Hans.
All right.
Any questions, Oklahoma? No? Okay, thank you, Hannes.
Thank you.
We'll move on to Louisiana.
Hey, this is Ed Knight again. I want to start this off by talking about our Watershed Initiative, our modeling efforts across the state, which basically we're modeling every one of our Hook 8s at varying degrees of detail. It's an ambitious undertaking. We're going to spend a bunch of money. We've currently secured 7 different consultants like Wood, Dewberry, Atkins, Friesen Nichols, all the major players who do this kind of modeling, both for FEMA and the federal government and other activities. They're all secured and under contract. We're working on our first task order with them, which is primarily to go out and spend some time with the watershed and figure out what approach is best for each watershed within their region. In the report, Appendix A has all of our contract regions. The ones pertinent to us, obviously, are just zones 1 through 3 across the northern border. But I included them all just because there may be interest in seeing some of that other stuff. We're currently thinking maybe August of 2020, we're going to be into that first task order. Our consultants will be out running around in the watersheds, for lack of a better phrase, trying to figure out where the problem areas are, features that demand more attention. They'll be looking for repetitive losses and flooding and that kind of stuff. That's what's really going to drive the priority of the effort. The most impacted parishes during the 16 event and the repetitive loss areas and critical infrastructure. I'll be actively engaging them to pay more attention in some of our Red River compact watersheds to see how we can maybe lasso some of the synergies that we may have. We do have a lot of these watersheds up in Arkansas. So the big question is how do we handle that with regards to our models? How in detail do we get? How do we deal with the hydrology? How do we deal with the timing and whatnot? So there'll be some interaction in southern Arkansas with our modelers. It definitely merits some more conversation. Probably not during the compact may not be the best time because it could be a pretty involved conversation, but it definitely allows for us to have more options. We anticipate being done fully with modeling across the state in about 3.5 years, at which time the Watershed, the Louisiana Watershed Initiative, will take possession of all the models and hopefully have some good products out there for people to use, including Red River Compact between us and Arkansas. Along with that initiative, we are modeling, or excuse me, we're redoing the LIDAR across our state. I reported on that last year. To update on it this year, we've completed some of the regions in the southern part of the state where we've had actual models completed in the Amite River Basin. That's in. All of this LIDAR is being flown to QL1. I believe it's all going to NAD 88, 12B for the projection. Nearly the entire state has been scanned, and a whole lot of it is in processing, and there's a significant portion of it that's actually being reviewed by USGS for acceptance into the 3DAP program. If you're interested in any of that, the locations that are available are already posted up on there. You just go into the 3DAP site, you navigate to it, and you'll be able to see what kind of product it is. It's very good, very high quality stuff. We're hoping to utilize some of that to be able to tie in with Arkansas stuff. Hopefully there aren't too many disparaging differences in the projections and the quality of it, I guess, for lack of a better phrase. Appendix B has a status update. That's as of, I believe, March of this year, so it's pretty up to date. I'm not going to bore you with all of it across the state, but some of it up in the northern part of the state and the middle part along the Arkansas border is going to be flown this fall. But a lot of it actually has been flown. The acquisition is complete in the northeast part of the state, which contains the BEF and Ouachita. It was initially delivered to USGS, and we're expecting that to be up on their website this fall or summer, late summer, early fall timeframe. So I look forward to having some good conversations with Arkansas about how we can utilize this and work together to try to come up with some efficient method of figuring out what flows should or could be. Again, we've looked at all the flows throughout the year like we usually do. The report has every one of our weekly reports as Appendix C for viewing for everybody. Ouachita and Red, no flow problems whatsoever. They were doing great. Bayou Bartholomew did very well, just a couple minor little things for a couple weeks. Not a big deal. Macon increased a little bit, but not a big deal. And the BEF was just fantastic compared to previous years. Of course, as we know, last couple of years have been very, very wet, so there really hasn't been issues. I'm hoping to find some resemblance of a pattern, being that it's so wet, to help associate how wet it is with how much runoff really should be getting. I'm kind of hoping that extended periods of wet flow removes some of the variables. Like if it's been dry for a long time and there's weirs in place, it takes a lot of flow to fill up those detention systems or retention systems, either way. But when it's really wet like this, it just wants to get in and get out. So it may provide us with some method of getting at a number that may be reasonable for everybody to look at for determining what runoff expectations we should have. Again, I'm looking forward to working with Arkansas this year. I've had some good conversations with some consultants. I've been talking to the Nature Conservancy, RTI International. They've got some fantastic ideas. And I suspect here before too long, we should probably coordinate a committee meeting off to the side to talk to them and maybe even get some of our Watershed Initiative people involved to try to tackle some of the synergies that we have with them. That's all I have to report this year. Again, the report I sent out to Sue, and I apologize, Sue, I got outside the door and I forgot immediately the name you gave me to send it to. But should y'all have any questions, fire away.
Yeah, no problem. Ed, I did get that sent on to Andrea, and she'll get a combined, a new packet put together that we'll get out hopefully prior to the commission call tomorrow morning. So.
Thank you, Ed. Any questions for Ed or Louisiana?
So Ed, did you say the modeling work has been completed? Or
we have 7 consultants under contract now, and we're working on our first task order. The first task order is really just go out there and figure out what you're dealing with kind of scenario and figure out what data you have to work with. That is one area that I think you and I could get a lot of effort for free. I hope. I'm pushing that issue pretty hard down here to try to get that. So they're going to have to look. They're going to have to look at the BEF as a system. We're modeling them at the Huck 8 level, so they'll definitely be needing to coordinate, probably with some of your assets up in Arkansas. I don't know how exactly they're going to handle it, but that's part of their first task order. They're going to figure out what they want to do with each Huck. They're going to talk to DOTD and the 5 other members of the Watershed Initiative to present how they want to go about doing the modeling. The state has developed some general guidances on how we want to try to do it statewide just for consistency's sake. But as you guys know, modeling is unique in every watershed to some degree. So we think we're in a good place, and we'll keep you informed when we start getting into that data acquisition mode.
Yeah, and I would I think we would love to be involved as far as coordinating, particularly when they're looking at modeling the northern part of Louisiana and where those watersheds cross over into Arkansas, because we wouldn't want any efforts that y'all are doing on your side. We want to make sure that we can provide your consultants with the benefits of the efforts that have been done in Arkansas, so that when they start with their assumptions from the beginning, that they've got the benefit of the work that we've already done.
Yeah, I'd definitely want to pick you at the right points of contact. So we'll be talking for sure.
Okay, great.
Any other questions or comments?
Yeah, Ed, I had one more question for you, and I forgot to ask the USGS guy the last time I was on a call. Were you guys able to initiate any of your low flow surveys on the BEF this last year? Once
I'm not sure. I'm not sure about that, but what we did do was make sure that when we were flying our LiDAR, we were trying to fly it at the lowest flow possible, and we hit some pretty good spots when it was pretty low, and the flagging conditions were good. So we captured a lot of that, but I'm going to have to fall back and check in with those guys. One thing that we discussed was actual bathymetry with some of these watersheds, whether or not we're going to put a boat in and do sonar and gather a lot of it and run 2D models or 1D models with cross sections. So we've got one large leap to deal with on that, and some of that we have to put on our consultants to try to let them decide how to do it or what they feel like is the best way. That part of the state, even up into your part of the state, as you know, has been so manipulated by hands of human that it can be very difficult to model.
Absolutely.
So we're paying real close attention, and maybe some of it, I would absolutely encourage you to be involved and hear at least what's being done. Some of the stuff that they talk about may be very, very appropriate to that part of Arkansas, to you. So.
You know, the Gulf states I actually have gotten the region that USGS, but Louisiana and Arkansas are in that. I guess it's Tennessee, the regional office out of Nashville, and the USGS person that was working for Louisiana, I think has become more of a support for all of the states. And I was on a call with him and the person that was in charge of the MAPS project that USGS is working on, and if I had mentioned to them, I guess in previous conversations, to make sure that that you guys were plugged in. And so I think within USGS, I think they're probably communicating, but if you haven't had the benefit of being updated kind of on where that overall project is, let me know, and maybe we can set up a short teleconference where you can get briefed on that.
Sounds like a great idea. There's one other aspect to the modeling that I left out that I didn't really talk about, but the Watershed Initiative is composed of DOTD, the Office of Community Development, the Disaster Recovery Unit, the Center, CPRA is the Coastal Protection and Restoration Authority, Governor's Office of Homeland Security, so GOSEP, and our Wildlife and Fisheries. We've been pulling in DEQ, trying to get them more involved. And we've got people from the federal agencies as well very involved. Obviously, with what we're doing, there's interest from the Corps, there's interest from all manner of things. We don't plan to be greedy with these models when they're completed, so we're getting as much feedback and input from as many different people as we can. And it was a great thing to do. It was burdensome at times, but it ends up in a very good place. And one of those things is that the hydrology behind a lot of this is going to be worked so that we can do the HMS stuff in a format that may better lend to low flow modeling in the near future, like using the constant and deficit loss method. Is one of those things that isn't typically used for flooding, because flooding, a lot of variables go away, and there's a lot of those things like evapotranspiration variables that you don't need to worry about, groundwater interaction you don't need to worry about, that kind of thing that you wouldn't normally see in like a green and amped or something, but you'd get it in that constant and deficit loss method. So there's a lot of good things that could be happening here, so definitely encourage you to get involved. And I'll make sure and pull you as much as I can.
Great.
All right, thank you. Anything else? Any other comments, questions?
Well, I guess I would just mention, Scott, I would just mention that I guess, and Ed, I know you were in on a couple of the calls, and Johannes and Scott, I can't remember if you guys, but the legal committee had a few calls between the last meeting and today, and I think two of those were more or less a kind of a joint call between the engineering and the legal committees. So I'm sure the legal committee will report out on that later. But I just wanted to mention that if for those of y'all that weren't, the engineering committee members that weren't on the calls, it was, and Ed, feel free to add, there wasn't really a whole lot of new discussion, I don't think. It was just continued dialogue about just in general Arkansas water law, I guess, and then interpretation of the compacts.
Yeah, that sums it up pretty well, especially with my level of expertise. I'm going to leave that up to the legal committee to talk about that. I did forget to mention or ask how the collection of the well data was coming with the Arkansas this year. We'd asked a couple of years ago, and we hadn't seen anything from it yet. And we know there were some technical difficulties that y'all were having, and we were just wondering if you were getting anywhere with that.
As far as I've been briefed, I think the USGS has made some significant improvements in their retrieval system. And so we can take another run at that. And they have primarily been focused on getting the groundwater part of it up and going was kind of the first priority. So I think there has been some progress on that since last year's meeting. And so I'll maybe we can set up, I can send you some information on that.
Thanks, appreciate it. I don't have anything else, so if anybody else has anything they need from me, feel free to ask away.
Any other comments? Any questions? Okay. Well, thanks everyone for joining in and participating.
Okay, thanks everybody on engineering. I think it'll be Heather's turn. Scott will give you a little bit of a break here for one committee. So again, if folks want to get a quick walk around and take a quick break, and then we'll be back on in about 10 minutes.
Thank you, Sue.
Okay, thank you.
I might start the process right now because it takes me that long.
Okay, you can get your new login. So anytime you're ready to kind of do a roll call of your other committee folks, I think we're set to go.
All right, I'd be happy to. Sarah, are you there? Sarah
Yeah, I'm
Gibson?
here.
Yes, I'm here.
And Michelle Hall?
Oh, sorry, I thought you said Michelle. Yeah, I'm here.
Oh, okay, sounds like we have both of you. And Michael Bynum?
I'm here. Good afternoon.
Great. Good afternoon. So this is Heather Hunsaker. I'm from Texas. And we have Sarah has been here in previous years, but Michelle and Michael are new members to our legal committee. So they actually weren't party to the conversations that we had throughout the year since the last meeting, but hopefully they'll catch up quickly. So what we had was last year, at the last year's annual meeting, Louisiana's Commissioner Knight requested that Arkansas begin the process of searching legal means to enforce the compact should there be a situation that needs to be remedied. So there would be a process to go forward. And Chairman Lowry assigned the legal committee to, and that, along those lines, to begin to determine what mechanisms Arkansas has in place and would need to enact in order to sufficiently enforce against possible future non-compliance with the terms of the compact. And so we held a series of calls, and most of them, after the first one, we included the engineering committee on our calls, or whichever engineers could join us. And what we did in order to look at that question was we started with, we had our first call, and then Arkansas's former legal rep, Crystal Phelps, sent out a memo summarizing Arkansas's legal situation for enforcement. And if you all want to follow along, her memo, along with a memo summarizing our conversations from Louisiana's rep and a final email from Arkansas's new legal rep, those are attached. Those are attachment F. That starts at page 47 of the PDF as I have it. So we had the several calls last year, and we talked about these things, and you can read for yourself what's in the memos and the final email from Arkansas, but let me just give the gist here, and then we'll go around, see if any of the other legal committee members had anything to add. Let's see, the first point, it's unclear whether federal water rights as enumerated in Arkansas's water rights law could be interpreted to include compact requirements, and which would make the compact controlled water not subject to lesser allocation priorities. Another point, just to summarize, Arkansas's former legal representative agreed that if Arkansas were required to restrict diversions to enforce the compact, Arkansas could possibly take appropriate steps, which might include entering into allocation orders if scientific evidence of the shortfall could be produced, or attempting to adopt an agency emergency rule to change the priority by placing compact requirements above agriculture requirements. And then the last sort of point that we talked about was the Arkansas's allocation plan on the White River, which was given as an example for us to look at because it's the only one that Arkansas has ever issued. And so we looked at that with engineers to consider how it came about. It does allow for allocation orders in certain circumstances, and apparently it required tons of info about seasonal flows and groundwater aquifer connections in order to understand what the in-stream needs were before it could be created. And then, of course, it was a long process of public participation. And so doing something similar on the red would require, the gist of what our conversation, this is not my opinion, but was that it would require more and better gauges in order to have enough information to do all that. And so that's all I've got about what legal committee talked about this year. But that I'll open it up for any of the other legal committees if they have anything to add. Why don't we start with, let's start with Arkansas. That's how we did it in our conversations. Michael, did you have anything?
Hi. I think the only thing that I would really add to your introductory remarks is just to, for those interested, to go ahead and take a look at my follow-up email as it pertains to the definition of federal water rights pursuant to state law and how they relate to allocation orders issued by ANRC. It appears like there's really a confluence of two separate types of case law. I mean, you've got, the federal case law on interstate compacts, And then you've got the federal case law on federal water rights, also referred to as federal reserve water rights. Comparing the state law to the case law, it does not appear that there's really any mention of rights acquired by states under interstate compacts to federal water rights. So, that's a conversation I'm happy to have with the rest of the committee members. I don't want to come in here like a bull in a china closet, so I'll just go ahead and let my email speak for itself, and I look forward to working with everyone.
Thanks, Michael. Michelle, since you're from Louisiana, do you have anything to add to that?
Not right now. I haven't really had a chance to do any research or analysis since Michael sent that email out, and so perhaps after I've had a bit more time to look at it, we could have a better discussion.
Okay, great. And Sarah, you were the other one on the calls with me. Did I miss anything?
No, I don't have anything to add.
All right. Did Sue or anybody else have any questions? Anything else we should be considering?
Yeah, I guess I don't want to inappropriately weigh in as, with my hat as the federal chair in this particular circumstance, but I guess I'll let my Westerner show through of the, certainly this making a tie of a Federal Reserve right to a compact right would be a very complicated, and, I'm not an attorney, but I guess I just, have not heard others try to make that legal argument, I guess. And so I think there would be a lot of attorneys with opinions about that, I guess. And so there would be no shortage of folks, Michael, to run that idea by, who would, I think, give you, perhaps case law from states who have a very different system than of course, what Arkansas would have in place for doing any kind of water regulation, as opposed to water regulation as a part of a commitment to an interstate compact. So I guess that would be my only just initial gut reaction, in that in hearing you give your summary here. But very much appreciate that you're beginning to tackle these, very difficult issues in states like yours, where there isn't this firm. Things get dry, you do X, Y, and Z, like, the prior appropriation states have, for better or for worse. I mean, not saying that that's the end all, but a very different approach anyway. So anyway, very much appreciate the update.
Thanks. Because that's all we've got for the legal committee.
I guess as far as the reports and what the commission might then do tomorrow. I guess, Michelle, you'd said you wanted some more time to take a look at what Michael has presented. Again, kind of same question I had asked to the other committees. Is there any kind of guidance or anything in addition that you'd like the commission to take action on tomorrow?
I don't know. Not that I can think of right now. No.
Sounds good. And there'll be ample opportunity if you kind of sleep on it and think, that there might be something that you would want to raise for the legal committee to, have kind of specifically assigned to them. There's definitely opportunity to do that tomorrow. So.
All right. Well, I don't know if this is my position now to close our legal committee call, since that was short and sweet, or Sue.
Yes, I think as long as the other committee members feel like that report is kind of the work done during the year, that's great. And then I know it's a little cumbersome doing these multiple call-ins, but we didn't quite know how this would go. So, and then as far as just sort of prep for the final call this afternoon, as a part of the packet, there was both kind of a budget and a recap that that Ryan had sent out. So, but Scott, we'll look back to you, I guess, for then budget committee that will start at the top of the hour. So thank you, everybody, and we'll see you again soon.
Thank you.
Thank you.